everyone! Hi friends! Thank you so much for stopping by and joining me today. This is an exciting video to do and I'm really stoked to bring you 7 looks using this Melt Cosmetics Smoke Sessions palette. I remember when it first came out, I was kind of turned off by the name of it. Not really into the marijuana thing, and of course it has marijuana leaves on it because that's just the theme of the palette. But when I saw the colors and I actually swatched them at Sephora, I fell in love because you've got your golds and then it goes into olives and teals and greens and turquoises, and what a fun palette, right? It's not a typical palette you see on the market. You don't really see a lot of palettes with more of this really strong color scheme, but with mostly shimmers into mattes. This is my first time ever using any Melt Cosmetics eyeshadows, so I don't really have anything to compare them to. Now I can't say with 100% accuracy, but I've heard that the Melt Cosmetics stackable eyeshadows are better quality than the ones in their palettes. I don't know. If you were interested in buying this palette and you aren't the most skilled with makeup, or you struggle with patchiness or blending, this is not a beginner's palette. There are times where I applied an eyeshadow, more specifically one of these 2 matte shades, so Space Queen or Sour Diesel, so Space Queen, Sour Diesel, and they would just look patchy. And granted, I used a primer and then I decided, okay, well, I'll set the primer, and even then I had to be really careful. So you'll notice throughout this video where I start out with a matte powder like this and I'm brushing it over my eyelids, and that's specifically so that I have a really soft powdery eyeshadow for those 2 matte shadows to blend into, because otherwise they stick to any moisture on your lid. These 2 matte shades are really pigmented. This is just with one go. Yeah, they're very dry and they feel more chalky. So when you apply it on your eyelid, and if you have any primer or even any natural oils, it's going to cling to that, and that's what creates patchiness. And it's just because of the dry texture of these matte shades. But as you can tell, they swatch beautifully. They're highly pigmented. That is just with one pass. You can definitely create a lot of fun looks using these 2 as a base for the rest of these eyeshadows. This obviously is not a complete palette. Today for this look I ended up using this lighter brown shadow in the crease to have a nice blend out color, something a little bit more neutral to work with. And then the shimmer shades, you can use a brush to apply them or you can use your fingers. I found that when I used a brush, they kicked up a lot of fallout. So you'll notice here that there's little holes and maybe little divots, I don't know, in a couple of these more glittery shimmery shadows. And the reason for that is because when I ran my brush, even just a fine flat brush like this, through the shadow, it just crumbled in the pan. They're very glittery, they're very shimmery, they're beautiful. However, they do kick up, and when you apply them, you do have to make sure that you have either a lot of powder underneath to help brush some of that fallout away, or you just don't have anything on your face until you're done applying your makeup. Throughout this video, you'll also see that I ended up using my MAC Fix Plus a lot just to foil it, to make it easier to apply and to have it stick better. Otherwise, there would be fallout everywhere. It's a beautiful palette. I would only recommend it if you're really comfortable playing around with makeup and or you're skilled with applying these kinds of products. That's pretty much it as far as that goes. Alright guys, so let's go ahead and get into the looks. Hey there, welcome to day 1. To start off this look, I'm going to apply a caramel brown shade all over the lid just to have a nice base color to start with. And then I'm going to go into this teal shade with a small dense brush and smudge that into the outer corner and lash line, blending upward in towards the outer crease area. I am taking my time to blend this out so that I have a soft, hazy, smoky line. Next, I take a flat lighting brush and dip it into a creamy white liner, which I'll lay down as a base for the lighter shadows. I take it from the inner corner to about 2/3 of the way across the lid. Going to the darker turquoise shade called Sweet Tooth, I start smudging this at the start of the line closest to the teal and blend it towards the tear duct. To the inner third of the lid, I'm blending Blue Dream, the lighter turquoise shade, over the top of the white base, and smudging that over the other turquoise to blend it together. Next, I'm using a black kohl liner to create a short flick off of the lash line to intensify the depth of the outer corner of the eye, and then smudge that out with a little bit of the teal. Skipping ahead, I've cleaned up the face and I've applied mascara. Now for the face. For blush, I chose to buff this terracotta shade onto the apples of my cheeks and to some high points on my face. For highlighter, I chose a twinkly but barely there champagne shade to give my face a little bit more light and lift. And I'm completing this look with a coral lip. I start with a peachy lipstick and then apply a coral gloss over the top. And that's the look for a line of gradation, or gradient eyeliner, but I think the other name sounds more interesting and bougie. I hope you enjoy this look. This day 2 look is probably the most interesting one in this series. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but it works especially well if you have extremely hooded eyes or even monolids. I start off by dusting some powder onto the lids to set my primer. This look also relies on having a warm transition shade, so I'm using this orange-brown one to start. I first start in the outer crease, but instead of continuing the shadow around the socket, I continue diagonally up towards the eyebrow. Using this light color is going to help outline where I want the darker teal to go next. When applying Space Queen, I start in small motions with just a touch of shadow on my brush and slowly push that shadow upward following that brown outline. Once the initial shape is laid out, I build up the pigment, but I'm careful to do so gradually and blend the edges along the way. For the areas closest to the lash line, I switched to a pencil brush for a more defined shading there, taking it to the bottom lash line and also blending the shadow out under the brow bone. For this look, I'm diving into the antique gold shade called Granddaddy and brushing that over the lid and just below the natural crease. To soften and blend this out, I dip into the brown from earlier and started to use it as an inner corner color. I actually didn't like how this looked, so I toned it down with an ivory shade, blended over the top of that. And then took Granddaddy into the corner up to the socket and the green crease line. And the same drill as before, I cleaned up the face and applied mascara. I decided to add a light champagne shade to the inner tear duct to brighten and separate my eyes a little bit more, and then applied a champagne colored eyeliner to the inner rim as well. Face time! For the cheeks, I went with a bubblegum pink blush and then used the same champagne highlighter from before to brighten my face. For the lips, I wanted a barely pink color, so I applied an iridescent gloss to my bottom lip and then a pink gloss to the top and blended them together. As different as this look is, I may come back to it again in the future, just like a boomerang. Bang! See what I did there? So I start off by creating a little dust storm on my eyes to set the primer and to absorb any moisture, yet again. Then I take a pencil brush and smudge Space Queen as closely as I can to the outer lash line, and then bring that into the outer V to act as a guide. Then I'll switch to a flat shader brush and layer the same teal on over the top. Switching brushes again, this time I use a large fluffy brush to blend the edges and smoke them out. Using the same flat brush, I'm swiping the light turquoise onto the center of the lid and blending it into the teal. It took several dips into the shadow to get it to this opacity, just to be honest. You see here where the shadow crumbled and applied a heavy concentration of product, which meant a lot of fallout, as you can see. Ugh. I blended out those edges as well, and then went into the lighter turquoise with a dry brush to apply that to the inner corner. It wasn't paying off as well as I'd liked, so I switched to foiling it on instead. I really wanted the Sweet Tooth shade to pop and blend into the other colors seamlessly, so instead of a brush, I used my finger to build the color up. For the under eyeliner, I smudged Space Queen and connected it to the outer crease. You may notice, but I like to blend a lot. To add a subtle highlight, this off-white matte shade works perfectly and doesn't detract from the shimmer on the lid. I finished up this look by applying a black winged liner and some mascara.
I decided to go a little funky with the muted orange shade as a blush. I like how it brings a little color to the face, but it doesn't make my fluffy cheeks look like oranges. For highlight, I'm dipping into the soft peachy pink shade and placing that onto the high points of my face. I used this lip color combo in a previous video and it's my new favorite nude look. I apply the nude base and then apply a rose gold glittery topper for some added zing. So pretty. This look calms the storms of my heart for just a minute. Instead of a powder base, I decided to use a light dusting of this malt brown shade, concentrating it more into the crease and blending it onto the lid. Then I apply a creamy white liner all over the lid to act as a base, but you know what, I decided this was cool enough. Just kidding. Then of course I blend it out because otherwise it would look like a creamy, gross mess. And then I went to the light turquoise shade and popped that all over the lid where the base had been applied previously. I found that using my finger to tap the color and help blend it a little bit better. Then of course I took a blending brush and diffused those edges. Then I went into the gold shade with the tapered pencil brush and used that in the inner tear duct to act as an accent color. I decided to do something a little bit different for this look. Then I took a slightly fluffier brush and swept that into the blue a little bit to blend them together. For a liner, I decided to use the teal eyeshadow in this palette and created an extended wing line. And then I used my finger to smudge out the line that I had created on the bottom lash line and then blended that in with the gold. Then I ran my finger through the gold eyeshadow to create a gold highlight on the lids. To wrap up the eye makeup, I applied a wing line and some mascara. And then for the face, I'm using kind of a peony pink blush and applying that, of course, to the apples of the cheeks and blending upward to the temple. And then for highlighter, taking that same peachy pink shade from before and applying that to the high points of my face. I decided to apply a little bit of that pink highlighter to the brow bone and blend that into the crease a little bit to make the look a little bit more cohesive. And then to the lips, I applied a rosy nude shade. And that's it. I really like this look. What do you think? Does it rise to the occasion? Does it soar above all others? This is the kind of look that reminds me of the end of a happy hour when you may have just had a few too many. This look was messy and the eyeshadow I used was falling out everywhere like a totally wasted party girl. I started with Sour Diesel and applied that all over the lid. And by this I mean I applied several layers to get it to be this opaque. Then I took a small dome fluffy brush and softened any harsh edges along the crease, outer edge of the eye, and in the inner eyelid as well. I took my time with this shadow because I really didn't want it to look patchy at all. Then I took Black Widow and applied that to the center of the lid. I think of this color as being more of a dirty martini, mostly because it's just messy, and it's a bit of an olive tone shade. And this is the part of happy hour where you realize that you've had one too many, and yeah, everything's kind of a blurry mess, and they're just getting a little sloppy now. But I went and cleaned that up and softened up those edges a bit more with a blending brush for fallout. To avoid another fallout mess, I decided to foil this gold shade and apply it to the inner corner and to the inner half of the bottom lash line. Then I'm taking Granddaddy and applying that in between the gold and Black Widow to blend them. In taking another look, I realized that I wanted more definition in my outer crease area, so I took a large brush and applied a deep brown shade. Then work some blending magic to soften the edges up. I saw some patchiness in the crease where the brown didn't blend as well, so I used a matte powder to sort of erase and soften the edges a bit more. Next, I smudged Sour Diesel into the bottom lash line and connected it to the gold, careful to blend them where they meet. I finished up the eye look with some black liner and mascara. For blush, I took a peach-toned mousse blush and applied it with my fingers. I find that mousse products blend better with a little bit of warmth as opposed to a brush. For highlighter, I was excited to go back to my Ride or Die, Soft and Gentle from MAC, and play up my face. And finally, for lips, I went more playful with a poppy pink, but then used a lip brush to just soften it slightly. Despite overdoing it with Dirty Martini, this cleaned up quite nicely and is a look I would actually wear for happy hour, even at home in a virtual one. We're almost to the end. For this look, I wanted to concentrate on using the golds and deep olive shade together. To anchor this look, I use a medium brown and concentrate this into the crease and blend it across the eye socket. Now for Sour Diesel. I used a small dome fluffy brush and barely tapped into the shadow so that I could start with the lightest application of color in the outer V. This step took me a while, but it's worth the effort to softly push the lightest amount of pigment onto the eye to avoid patchiness and applying too much product. As it blended out, I applied more pigment and brushed that inward toward the center of the lid and under the bottom lash line. To soften and diffuse edges, I like to use a foundation powder and use that to blend out the other shadows. And now, introducing the star of the show, Miss Gravity Go, our golden star. To make sure she stands out and pops against the olive, I foil the shadow and then swipe it over the lid, layering it slightly over the olive. Once it dries, I add a dry layer of shadow over the top, which is what makes this absolutely stunning. I apply it to the inner corner and in the inner half of the bottom lash line as well. Next, I take Sour Diesel and smudge it under the other half of the lid, connecting it to the gold and blending them together in the center. I finish up by applying a little flick of black liner to the end and some mascara. For the face, I chose a bright pink blush, but it ended up being a little too pigmented for the look I was trying to achieve, so I had to use my foundation brush to blend it down. I had forgotten that I have this highlighter. It is gorgeous. It's white with a pinky shift. Because it's a liquid, I used a duo fiber fan brush to gently tap it onto the skin evenly and then use my fingers to blend it out. For the lips, I chose a rose pink liquid lipstick and called it good. Red would have also been pretty, but I think pink lets the gold take the show and remain in the limelight. What do you think? Are you starry-eyed for this look? Does it take home the gold medal for you? Congratulations! You made it to day 7 and the final look in the series. Woohoo! Just like before, I'm starting with the base of powder and then I go into this duo palette and use a fluffy brush to lightly define the crease area. Back to the Sour Diesel shade and another tap into the pigment. I go to town blending it from the outer crease area downward towards the lash line and the center of the lid. I concentrate most of the shadow on the outer section though, and make sure it gets lighter as the color blends onto the lid. I realized that I hadn't used this color much at all, so Mean Green, which is a stunning emerald shade, is today's magical color. Using my finger to apply the shade onto the lids made blending and smoothing it out so much easier and lessened the amount of fallout I probably would have had otherwise. Once applied, I then use a fluffy brush to, you guessed it, soften and blend out the edges. You're so smart. For additional sparkle and highlight, I dabbed a bit of Blue Dream onto the center of the lid using a small brush, and then went back into the green with a flat brush to blend out the edges of the turquoise and emphasize that 3D illusion created with the green. And again, I blend out the edges and smudge what's left on that brush under the bottom lash line. Then I take a black liner and tightline the top waterline and create a subtle flick off the edge of the eye and finish up with mascara. For added sparkle, I decided to apply a shimmering spring green glitter pigment to the inner corner and to the center of the lid on top of Blue Dream. I use a glitter adhesive so that I can prevent the messy pigment from having a tantrum on my face. Ain't nobody got time for that. Now onward to the face for the last time. I chose to apply this cool mauve pink blush to my cheeks and up into my temples. For highlighter, I went with a soft pink glisten on the high points of my face. Ready for something different? A purpley orchid shade. I'm a little bit obsessed with this color. It contrasts so beautifully with this light green, and it lets me have fun with gem tones in this look. I love this. What do you think?
Alright, so I'm finished with day 7's makeup look and I'm really enjoying how this turned out. I'm really enjoying this lip color. It is from Jolu Cosmetics and it's called Lavanda. It reminds me of Tawanda, if you've ever seen fried green tomatoes. Tawanda! I have 2 more palettes here in my hands that you guys can choose from for the next Color Story video series. I have Paradise Enchanted Peach Tone palette from L'Oreal, their take on the Too Faced Peach palette. Never used this. Or the Anastasia Beverly Hills Riviera palette. So comment below, let me know which one you want to see next, and I will get that uploaded sometime in May. Also, make sure you give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell icon so that you can be notified of every new video I post. And yeah, tell your friends because every friend needs some Melt Cosmetics, and maybe you guys need a smoke session together. I don't know why I said that. Sorry. I don't smoke, but I've had 7 smoke sessions with this. Maybe 8. I don't know. I forgot. Thanks again for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Stay well, stay healthy, keep it real. Alright, I'll see you guys in the next video. Stay electric as always. Bye.